All right, we're talking with Damon Darnall, the drone boss and founder of the Sky Eye Network. Damon got some cool things to talk about. So take us back and tell us where you're coming from. What's your background?
Well, so the aviation and drones specifically, I've been flying drones since 1976, and and running a commercial drone business since 1993. So a little over 30 years making money with these things. And when I was flying them recreationally, we did some drone racing. So I was fortunate enough to actually set a couple world records. And these little guys are pretty quick. They fly about 250 miles an hour. They pull about 48 G's in the corners. So if you're familiar with G forces, 48 is kind of a lot, right?
Yeah,
And
like the average human can only take like 6 or 8.
right before they black out. Astronauts and aerobatic pilots, can take 10 for just a few seconds,
Yeah,
right? It's
G suit. Yeah.
it's pretty cool. And drones, they've been around a long time. The first actual patent on a drone in the United States was by Nicholas Tesla back in 1898. So
Huh.
they've had a big role in aviation, and I've always been just enamored with them. And about 10 years ago, we started helping people actually make money with drones when the technology changed, because for decades it was a self-regulating industry, right? Like that
Mhm.
was just they were so hard to fly, and it took just thousands of flight hours before you could become competent enough to do anything on a professional level and actually get paid for it. So it was really just hobbyists that did
Mhm.
it for a long time. But with the advent of these amazing little supercomputers, right, and the accelerometers and gyros, that totally changed the game. And so now drones are easier to fly and harder to crash than ever before in history. And the market's just really opened up. So it's pretty amazing the opportunities out there now.
That's crazy. I mean, I had a couple radio controlled airplanes back in the 80s, but I never remember seeing drones at the hobby shop or the radio controlled shop. So, what kind of drones did we have back in the 70s that long ago?
Yeah, so we're pretty much flying single rotor, like basically mini helicopters.
Uh,
We'd attach sensors to them or put DSLR cameras or cinematography cameras, like if we're doing Hollywood movies
mhm.
and stuff, and just modify them on the single rotors, or fixed wing if we were doing like a search and rescue operation or something, and essentially like a remote control airplane. That was essentially what we rigged up. But the multi rotors, and again, that was the technology, just like the modern fighter jets. These multi rotors, and these are basically little remote control helicopters with multiple motors, known as drones, what most people think of as drones. But these things, the advanced computing in them, they're literally doing thousands of calculations every second, to keep these things airborne. And we couldn't, like, no human could fly one of these if it wasn't for the computers, like the modern fighter jets. Probably if you took all the avionic or all the computer aided stuff out of it, nobody could fly the things.
Yeah, yeah, just little mini corrections happening, thousands of times a second. So,
Yeah.
um, so what were some of the how were you originally involved in the drone as far as like turning that into a business?
Well, I had all kinds of ideas. I think, like most people that do anything for a hobby or passion, it's like, if I could get paid for this, it would be awesome. And and if you were really, really good, which in that realm I was, but there still wasn't much money, especially in the United States. Like, they would have these world competitions, and they're kind of like the Olympics. Every 4 years, they have them in different countries. And in other countries, they don't have like professional football teams or baseball teams or movie stars or any of that stuff. So their drone pilots were their national heroes, so to speak. So we'd go to these other smaller countries, and man, that was their full time job. The government paid for their training. They gave them a house, a butler, a chef, and they just a driver. Their full time job was just to fly and practice to compete with us. And we go over there, we're working two jobs and all this stuff. I remember one of the events we went to, the um, had podium there, and the trophy girl is like, "Oh my gosh, it must be great when you go back to your country." And she's thinking it's like they have a Macy's parade for us. And I was like, "No, I've got to go back to work and do laundry." And she was like, "You do your laundry?" Like, it was this thing. I was like, "Yeah, it's like nothing." But what really got me started in it was I had this big idea of getting a blimp, a big giant blimp. If you've ever been to the beach, you've seen like the airplanes dragging the banners. behind them for like
Oh yeah.
restaurants or something.
Oh yeah.
So I thought, man, this would be great if I got one of these. I could have a banner on each side of the blimp, and I could tow, another banner behind it. I could advertise for three companies, get paid three times as much, and be way cheaper than flying a plane. And so I bought this giant blimp and went out there. Got a couple businesses that were excited about it. They went out there to see the test flight. Uh, Pro tip: don't ever beta test something for the first time with clients when you haven't tested it. And so I show up out there, they're out there. And the problem, this thing has a top speed about 5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And if you've ever been to a beach, you know where this is going, right, Joe? So I launched this sucker in about a 15-mile-an-hour headwind, and I just nail it, and it just starts going back and drifting out over the ocean. And
Oh
we
no.
drive the truck in the beach and try and get it and miss it. It was like Keystone Cops. It was just a fiasco. And finally retrieved it. But I had all my hopes and dreams and visions of this whole business just poof, just went up. So I thought, well, I can do something indoors. What could I do indoors? So I started going out. I talked to a little over 100 different, you know, promotional events, venues, convention centers, just anything I could think of that would be indoors. And then finally in 93, I got a break to fly for a professional sport. It was actually the Dallas Stars.
Huh.
And when I went in there and pitched them, they were, everyone just looked at me like I was nuts. Have you ever had such a good idea, or you're so convinced something would work, but people just look at you like you have three heads?
Oh yeah. I had plenty of them like that.
Yeah. And so they're like, kid, I think you're nuts. I don't think this will work. But if it works half as good as you think it will, we'll give it a shot. So why don't you come into the game this weekend and see how it works out. And if it takes off, then we'll look at doing something. And I was pumped. So um, we go out there and do it. And by the way, I was a budding entrepreneur, and I was like broker than broke. So, and this thing took like almost $600 of helium to fill up. So that was like, $1 million to me, but I was able to scrape it together. We go out there. I had done I had talked to a boot manufacturer, Justin Boots, in Texas, and they had given us 6 pairs of boots. And I made these little coupons, and I rigged up a worm gear on the bottom of the, of the boom there, and worked with the announcer to find out where the VIP seats were. And anyway, we went out there, flew out there. He did a great job on the announcing part, and the whole crowd was all into it. And we dropped these little sand weighted parachute coupons for pairs of boots all around in the VIP sections. And it was a huge deal. And anyway, long story short, they ended up having the next game. They sold more VIP tickets than they've ever sold before, as far as an increase from any promotion. So we signed a contract, and it went pretty much, that turned the tides. And if you've ever been to an indoor sporting event since 93, you've seen a blimp in there of one variation or another. And then that just started the whole process, and then one thing led to another, and then you get known as the drone expert, and then you started doing all kinds of other inspections and search and rescue and commercial things. And as the awareness has gotten better and the technology's gotten better, the things we can do with them are amazing. I mean, we do aerial funerals where we'll spread ashes over, ocean, lakes, rivers, certain areas, for people, for pets, all kinds of inspections, which still blows my mind that, last year they had over 300 fatalities doing inspections of bridges, dams, power lines, cell towers, stuff like that. And 82% of those fatalities could have easily been avoided because a drone could have done it. They were just doing a routine inspection. They weren't replacing anything, but they're not using them yet. So that's, another huge area of opportunity that's out there. And, there's actually over 300 different vertical markets, things you can do with drones, almost like a division in your business, and more and more every day. So it's getting huge.
No kidding. All right, back talking with Damon Darnall, the drone boss. So where's the drone business at today? Like how, so somebody, you've helped a lot of people. How do you talk to somebody that's looking to start their drone business? Like um what's the secret to having a successful drone business?
Well, I think you got to actually do it, right? That's I think the biggest thing. But you pretty much have three paths that you can go. One, you can just do it as kind of a side hustle, and be like an independent contractor for companies and people. Two, you could work for a company as a drone pilot, kind of a W-2 pilot, and work for a company. Or you can start your own drone business, which is, we help people do all three. Of course, the most lucrative and in my opinion, the best is starting your own business, being an entrepreneur and being in control of your own destiny. And that's one of the things that I think is veterans have a real huge advantage there that they don't really realize, because and we see it in the drone space. Like, we've trained over 10,000 people to start their own businesses. And we have a lot of veterans that come through our training, our program. And the vast majority of them, compared to civilians, they do way better than the civilians do. And I think the secret ingredient is, number one, they're not afraid of work. They're not afraid to execute.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to take orders and follow directions.
Mhm.
And they don't question it. They don't reinvent the wheel and say, well, it's like baking a cake and say, I think instead of baking soda, I want to put in, flour. It's if you change one thing, it can totally change the outcome of it.
Yeah.
And they follow the plan. We've got plans that they follow, and you do A, B, and C, and you get the result. It's just essentially like a recipe, and they do really, really well at it.
Yeah.
The other thing that's neat is having the community. We have tons of our veterans that are in our network. They say that the family that they have is the closest thing they had to when they were in the military.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that well, I think people in general, but especially veterans, because veterans had that, at one point. A lot of people never had that.
Right.
And just knowing that someone's got your back and you can count on them for anything. And, and you're not afraid to ask questions or ask for help or ask for support. And, and you've got their back too. So, it's a neat, just a neat feeling, and it gives a sense of security and really builds the confidence. Because when you're an entrepreneur, that's one of you have a lot of great days and amazing days, but you have hard days too. And, some people, they don't want to have to figure it out. If stuff isn't going the way that they want to, they don't want to figure it out. They just want someone to tell me what to do, tell me to put this, square peg in a square hole, or the square fitting, and go home, and that's it. Other people really like the creation and building and building their own economy. And the cool thing with the drone space, you asked where it is, and it's at the best place it's ever been. In fact, I call it, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. It doesn't feel like it, but it really is. I mean, it's where it is now. It's at the best place it's ever been. There's more awareness than ever before, but the supply is down here on the bottom and the demand is way up here. So
Hmm.
there's this huge delta there. Now it's catching up, and eventually it's probably going to be 3 years with AI, maybe, somewhere between 3 and 5 years, maybe closer to two, but we've got where it's going to even out. And then it's going to be just like every other business, which, you can still do it, but man, it's going to be a lot harder, to do it at that point.
Yeah.
And the growth that we're seeing, I mean, they're just on the commercial drone space. Precedence Research, they released a report at the end of this last year, and they were showing that we're basically hitting around $27 billion in commercial drone activity at the end of 2024. And they're predicting by 2030, which is just 5 years from now, we're going to be at $500 billion. So just massive, massive opportunity. And someone's going to get paid for it. And of course, it's usually always comes down to the entrepreneurs, because this is commercial stuff, not government contracts.
Yeah. So where are most drone business operators? Where's most of their revenue coming from?
Well, it's spread out over a lot of things, but I think the main things the main thing people are making money with drones right now are doing things like real estate, which is the most competitive, but it's not that competitive. Depending what report you read, it's somewhere between 7 and 9% saturated. So it's still over 90% wide open, but that's a really easy one. Also, local businesses is a huge opportunity. We have guys that are making multiple six figures and even seven figures doing both of those things. Also, hotels and resorts, especially coming out of COVID, the companies that made it, they're really doubling down on video and images and stuff, anything internet based. And then inspections is a huge opportunity, doing power lines or wind farms or solar farms or roof inspections or cell towers or bridges, dams, highways. That's huge. And then mapping is another incredible opportunity. Like, we can fly over a golf course and tell where they're watering too much and where they're not watering enough, where they're over fertilizing and under fertilizing. And that sounds cool, but the reality is it saves the average golf course about 12 to 16 million gallons of wasted water a year because they just overwater everything. And it saves them about $200,000 in wasted fertilizer because they just fertilize everything. And it's an easy sale. It's like, oh, you could pay me 10 grand a year to do this, or you could not use it and spend 200 grand. So it's a
Yeah.
it's pretty easy sale. And
So
that's with
with
all
that,
ag.
like with that specifically with the golf course, are you like having like computer analysis or AI analyzing the video that you take, or are you just watching your own video going, oh, it looks a little dry there, water too much there? Like, how specific is that?
Yeah, it is AI, and that's the cool thing is the drones are essentially AI in the sky. So, like for the golf course, do a system called stitching. So essentially, we map the terrain, and it's all computer and AI generated. It calculates an overlap, and then it just autonomously flies. It's GPS guided. You just hit start mission, it'll start flying, and it just starts flying a grid over the golf course. And then if it's a huge area and the battery runs out, then it'll pause its mission. It'll fly back over where it took off, automatically land. You just change the battery, hit resume. It'll fly back over exactly where it paused, continue the mission, do the whole thing. It's for the pilot, it's incredibly boring because you're just sitting there. And then you just upload all the data, and it takes all the thousands of images, it overlaps it and stitches it together to one big image. And the cool thing is, for the superintendent, they can zoom out and see all 18 holes, or they can zoom in on one particular green and they can literally see the cleat prints in the green. And then the AI calculates everything and analyzes it, and it says, oh, if there's an infection or encroachment, or if there's some kind of disease or moisture or mold, it can detect that. And then we even have different sensors we can put on them, that NDVI sensors that will essentially calculate the health of it. So we can tell, like, if you're looking at a green, it looks normal, a putting, a green, but with the NDVI sensor, we can see, oh, there's some kind of disease or fungus, and they can go in there and take a soil sample and get ahead of it before they're having to go on the other end. Like, we did an avocado orchard, and it identified this one tree that was different. They had an arborist go out and do a core sample, and this tree has this rare disease that normally they don't find out about until the end of the season. And by that time, it infects the entire orchard. And the only solution is they have to literally burn and strip down the whole orchard and replant.
Hmm.
And this guy he's just like, you don't understand. You saved us millions and millions of dollars, because it would have taken 8 to 10 years to get this orchard back up to the production level we have now. And
Yeah.
they were able to just consolidate that one tree and take it out.
What's your training course like?
So we have a 3 day kind of immersion training. We found that more people, if you can just block off 3 days and just lock in, you can learn what you would normally learn in 6 weeks of doing spaced out training. So we have a 3 day training course that people can come to and learn more than they ever thought that they would need to know about drones and running a drone business. And we have a lot of fun. And people think 3 whole days, what could I possibly learn about drones in 3 days? But by the end of it, they're always wanting more, and it's a lot of fun. It's called Drone Command Live. And it's we have a blast, and it's always it's changing based on the information and the technology that's there.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple of specific questions that you included in your bio information here. So, like, what are the top five fastest paths to cash in the drone industry?
Yeah, so I would say that real estate, and we call it aerial imagery, but it's basically local photography, marketing, and advertising for local businesses, for like Google My Business and for their website and social media. And then aerial videography, doing promo videos like for car dealerships and things like that. The hotels and resorts are definitely there. And then I think the inspection side is, there's so much value on the inspection. And the inspection, you could theoretically, each one of those, you could just do cell tower inspections. You could just do roof inspections. You could just do residential roof inspections or commercial roof inspections or solar farms or whatever. But and each one of those is pretty radically different. It's, if you break it down into the nuances, it's kind of like having a doctor. Like you have a heart surgeon or an orthopedic doctor or a general practitioner, you know, and same thing with the with those different avenues there.
Yeah.
So
And,
those would be the five, I would say.
and so you're saying somebody could realistically be bringing in, six figures or more with a successful drone business.
Yeah, absolutely. If they do the work. And in fact, what we did is when I started the program, we did a beta program. We got a handful of people that they had three criteria. They couldn't have any drone experience. They couldn't have any videography or photography experience. And they couldn't have any successful entrepreneurial experience. And how we defined that was they could have never generated more than $42,000 a year in net revenue. Because there were people that had HVAC companies or plumbing companies. They did $1 million a year, but after paying everybody and expenses, they netted out, 35, 32, something like that.
Yeah.
So we threw all these people in there. They all did it part-time except for one. We had one person that did it full-time, but everyone else either did their full-time jobs or ran their existing business. And the goal was, with limited support, not near what they have now, but with limited support, to get them from 0 to 6 figures in that first 12 months. And everybody hit the mark, and we're like, okay, let's go. This will work, and been off to the races since then.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, if somebody wants to find out more about your training course and how to get involved in starting their own drone business, how would they go about doing that?
Probably Drone Command Live would probably be the best thing. So it's just dronecommandlive.com,
Mhm.
and we do trainings. We do about 6 to 8 of them every year, and they can go to the website, see what's there, and if anyone has any different additional questions or something, or find out more about our other trainings, there's a contact page at the bottom, and they can reach out to us.
Yeah, and so is your training actually 3 days in person, or is it all?
It's virtual.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's all virtual training. Well, not all of our training is virtual. This particular one is virtual. And then we also have some other in-person trainings, but there's some prerequisites to some of that stuff. But if they're interested in that, we can do that. We're actually looking at doing a training up here at NASA. Yeah, in this next, I think Q2 of this year, we'll be doing that.
Okay. Um, what's with the FAA these days? What's the current licensing requirements to be a drone pilot?
It's actually pretty simple and a little crazy, if you ask me. There's no practical for it, so it's just a written test right now.
Okay.
And it's called Part 107, and I've got a video course and a study guide for that. Most people, I recommend that you study about 9 hours, 6, 9, maybe 12 hours at the most to go through and do it. If you have any aviation background, it'll be super easy for you, because the majority of the test is reading TAFs and METARs and sectional charts and stuff like that. And if you have no idea what that stuff is, again, it's not super hard to learn, but it is something new that you'll learn. The part that I said is crazy is there's no practical. So you just have to kind of know the rules of the airspace, which I think is super important, so we don't have accidents or mishaps.
Right.
But as far as flying a drone, there's not really anything that requires that at this point. And that will probably change in the future. But right now, it's pretty easy.
If is there something about it, if you're already a licensed pilot, do you still take the same test, or how's that work?
Yeah, it's super easy. So if you're Part 61 and you're current, then you just take an online test that's one of those, no fail tests, right? Like you have to get a perfect 100, but you can't get anything but a perfect 100. So you just go to faasafety.gov, and you just go to the Part 107, and you watch a little video, and then it asks you some questions, and A, B, or C, and you say C, and it's like, nope, try again. You're like, B, nope, try again. A, you got it. Go to the next question. But that one's actually good, because for if you have an existing, if you already have your pilot's license, that is all about drones because and there's nothing about METARs and TAFs and all that's because that stuff. And so it's really good and gives you a good baseline foundation for the drone stuff. And I think the FAA changed the test because it used to be it wasn't timed, so you could just keep hitting the buttons, and so like you could pass the test in like 4 minutes. But now I think they have a little video, and you have to wait like 30 seconds, and and go through it. So it'll take about 30 minutes for you. But yeah, if you already have a pilot's license, super easy. You can knock it out in probably less than an hour.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time here, so dronecommandlive.com is where to go if you want to check out your training course. And then beyond that, if you're talking to somebody that's in the military getting out, they just got out recently and interested in possibly starting a drone business, what kind of advice comes to mind?
Well, I think it, anything is going to be tough. Things are radically different in civilian life when you get out of the military, but it doesn't have to be. And I think the big key is kind of controlling where your focus goes because you can focus to how things are different and all the problems and challenges, or you can look at the opportunities and solutions. And I think if you find yourself in that situation, look at the opportunities and solutions and all the transferable skills you have because I think that's one of the biggest things that we discount. Whether you've got 5 years or 10 years or 20 years of previous experience and transferable skills, a lot of that has brought you to this point and gotten you ready for the next steps. And whether it's in aviation or the drone space or whatever it is, I just really recommend that you get some kind of mentor or some kind of coach, somebody that knows the road ahead that can help you navigate it and bounce ideas off of. And I think you'll set yourself up for the best success you have, regardless of what it is. And then just be proud of your everything that you've done and all the skills that you've learned, even if you don't really realize it, because there is a lot of opportunity out there. But you have to keep that momentum going and keep doing it, and you'll do awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Darnell, for or Damon, excuse me. I know somebody with their first name's Darnell, so
Awesome. Yeah. Either way is fine with me.
your name works both ways, Damon Darnell or Darnell Damon. So anyways,
Yep.
thanks for being on the show, Damon. We appreciate your telling your story and look forward to seeing your future success.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
All right, we're Oscar Mike.